So as we fastly approach the holiday season for the Nintendo Switch, there are some very exciting upcoming releases that got brand new trailers today, one of which we have to spend more time on than the other because it was absolutely not as well received at first. Now fans are back on board. And the big talking point for today's video has to do with Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack and the recent N64 emulator update that was pushed out, as there's quite a bit of changes behind the scenes that we need to go over and break down and discuss how it'll affect your gameplay performance in N64 games on NSO going forward. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. And as I mentioned, guys, we are discussing a couple different topics today, and we have to kick it off with a conversation around Nintendo Switch's 2022 holiday games lineup because, to my surprise, we are flying through October right now, and we are getting very close to a couple marquee releases for the Switch that did get updated trailers today, and we have to start off with Bayonetta 3 that will be out October 28th. That is this month. We are fastly approaching the release date here, and I personally am 100% on board with this game. I love the high intensity, high action hack and slash style games like this. It's very reminiscent to me of the original God of War 1 through 3 on the PS2 and PS3, in addition to the Devil May Cry series. And if you like those style of games, you will most likely like Bayonetta 3. There has been some discussion online about how this game looks in terms of its overall performance and the frame rate, and there may be some issues. We are working off of a Tegra X1 that was released in 2015, then sold on the Switch in 2017. It is a dated piece of hardware. Yes, there are developers who pull off the quote-unquote impossible ports and get their games running flawlessly. Platinum may struggle in certain aspects of performance with this game, but as long as it is not game breaking, I personally am not worried about it, and I do have full faith that this will be an enjoyable project through and through. So I'm personally not concerned with the quality and the look and how it's playing whenever we see these trailers. The trailer looked great to me. Will we maybe have to expect some frame dips that happen occasionally from time to time? I would imagine so, but provided it is not a buggy, glitchy mess, I will be happy to pick this up at full price day one when it does release on October 28th. And I definitely want to hear from you guys if you're planning on picking it up or not, either on or after release, and what you think of the overall graphical performance of this game in terms of what's being talked about online. Now, from there, we have to talk about a game that is also slated for Nintendo's 2022 holiday release that had nothing but a roller coaster of hype and anticipation around it when we first saw the reveal. Then that dwindled down very fastly when we got kind of a marketing partnership that I think was a big misstep for Sega. Yes, we are talking about Sonic Frontiers and a brand new trailer that just dropped today on Nintendo of America's YouTube channel, where it actually outlines the combat and upgrade skill tree abilities in this game. I personally think that this was one of the best, most well put together trailers that has been released for Sonic Frontiers since we saw its initial reveal, and the only misstep with this thing was Sega choosing to partner with IGN for their IGN First, where they tried to break out separate sections of the game, show one just in the traversal of the world, which people thought looked very empty. Then they had one focused only on combat, they had one focused only on bosses. Why they did it like that and they had it focused on singular areas of the game just didn't make a lot of sense, and it also made fans worry that we weren't going to have much to do in this giant open zone Sonic game because it looked like you just had one thing going on, because that's how they chose to break up the trailers. Since then, we had that very hyped Nintendo Direct focus trailer with the fast style Sonic music. You see transitions of all the different types of level designs that are in the game, in addition to some classical zones that we will be going back to that are very reminiscent of the classic 2D Sonic style experience, in addition to just that Sonic Adventure style level layout that I think many fans are now looking forward to. And in the trailer today, they did a fantastic job outlining that yes, not only are there different zones we will be going to, as we saw them focus on the desert side of things quite a bit more in this, but they broke down the skill tree and ability upgrade path for Sonic, which I think is a genius gameplay mechanic to implement into the Blue Hedgehog's arsenal, because it just seems like that is going to be a big driving point behind why why you go and explore all of these vast open zones. You apparently get experience points of some sort, or I can't remember what they called the things that fall out of the enemies. You guys can let me know in the comments down below, but it's essentially your power points that you can upgrade your skill tree with, and they highlighted quite a few abilities that you can expect to unlock along the way, like Phantom Rush, Sonic Boom, Wild Rush, Psy Loop, and a parry mechanic, which, by the way, I don't believe the parry mechanic is necessarily an upgrade. Maybe it is, but just having that kind of fast action response, I am a Souls fan out there through and through, and definitely Zelda Breath of the Wild, I feel like, took a lot from the Souls style of combat with things like the Fury Rush system. So you guys might be more into the Souls games if you haven't given them a chance. If you're a Breath of the Wild fan, like, I can't make that recommendation enough to go check out those games at some point, and especially Elden Ring being open world. But regardless of all of that, quick action dodges like parries, where you have an enemy coming directly at you and you're trying to time your response just right, get me very excited about the intensity of the combat system in a game. And that's really what hooks me in, is when that gameplay feels very stressful and life or death in certain cases. I'm a huge fan of Metroid Dread. That game's kind of ridiculously hard, but it does such a good job of creating that urgency, and it is all up to you, the player, to master the mechanics and survive. And if we are going to see any kind of level of difficulty, or at least just a robust selections of attacks that you can be tactical with in this game, I think it's going to take Sonic to the next level. And this is claimed to be the future of what Sonic games will be for the next 10 years plus. So if you don't like Frontiers, you may not like where Sonic is headed for the next chapters, but I am definitely back on board with this game. I'm seeing a lot of people online back on board with the game now that we've gotten a deeper look at the mechanics and these more updated, concise, well put together trailers. And I highly recommend you guys, after you're done with this video, go check out the Bayonetta 3 trailer in full length, and go check out the Sonic trailer in full length. I will have both of them linked in the descriptions down below under the sources section. These are solid trailers, and it has me more hyped than ever for Nintendo Switch's 2022 games lineup and where we're headed from here. But please share with me in the comments down below how you're feeling about both these different games, and specifically around Sonic Frontiers, if your opinion has changed back to how this game is actually looking great. Not to mention, the trailer today supposedly was running on the Switch. The Switch version is looking great. So how hyped are you for these titles, and will you be picking up either one at or near release as we finish out the rest of October and fastly go into November? So please share all that in the comments down below. Now, the other story we're talking about today has to do with the recent update that hit for Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack in the form of Pilotwings 64 being added into the service. But historically, we have seen with these updates, when new games go live, Nintendo will provide an N64 emulator update itself, meaning yes, the app that we boot up to play these games, we are clearly not playing these on original hardware. Nintendo has gone in and devised emulators that can run these projects, and you may remember, especially if you've been around and keeping up with NSO news over the course of time, that when this service launched, there was numerous bugs and glitches and graphical problems with classic games like No Fog in Ocarina of Time. That made for some very interesting discussion, because that is such a fan classic. You didn't have water reflections looking right in the water temple. There was noticeable input delay in certain games, and fortunately, slowly, we have seen Nintendo roll out numerous updates to address many of these problems, and most recently, it was discovered that Pilotwings 64 is running at 60 frames per second, which is kind of crazy considering the original project only ran at 30 in terms of gameplay, because apparently it was 60 in the menu system, but 30 most likely due to the technical hardware of the N64. So now we're truly getting upgraded versions of these classic games, and it definitely is looking better. However, one noticeable thing that has been spotted is that with this latest N64 game edition, the emulator has been updated to 2.7.0, and there's quite a bit of interesting dialogue around it online. And to get on the same page with what's been spotted here and discuss what it ultimately means for us and our expectations with future N64 games and how they will run going forward, let's quickly hop over to Twitter and read through Luigi Blood's post, who is a known data miner, where they go into a lot of detail around some of the behind the scenes or under the hood changes, if you will, for this latest update for the NSO emulator. Findings about N64 NSO 2.7.0 Pilotwings 64 update. They added something related to the controls to every game called Control Opt Layout Pattern. I have no idea what that means yet. I see clear changes to F-Zero X that seems to be emulator performance related things, so they might actually have fixed the frame rate skipping. Bugs that are not fixed: Yoshi's Story in Vizzo still has broken transparency. F-Zero X, I'm sorry, but the frame rate is still not 100% smooth. 60 FPS, it still sometimes dips. They clearly changed how they handle the frames, but not enough. Now then, in a separate tweet that he links at the end of this thread, where there is an interesting talking point around what's really going on with Nintendo changing this emulator, he says the following: just know that Nintendo doesn't willingly put a higher rate on purpose. The N64 emulator is so inaccurate and disregards pretty much all technical timings that the games just run at their max engine capped frame rate. Now that last tweet there is actually where I want to spend a little bit of time around this discussion, because yes, while we are getting more fixes and implementations of updates for the N64 emulator, and we're seeing things like 60 FPS, it is being claimed, at least from a data mining point of view, that this is actually unintentional, and rather the code is just going to allow these games to run at whatever the engine supports, and it's not necessarily Nintendo deciding let's remaster or give that higher quality frame rate to this title that could have run at it on the N64, but we couldn't do it because of the hardware, so let's intentionally upgrade it to 60 FPS. That may not be what's actually going on here, and as they adjust different things in the emulator, certain titles that just have it enabled in the engine in the background will run at that 60 FPS, and apparently they're still tweaking things and how it emulates games like F-Zero that are not up to standard just yet, but that are slowly fixing some of the frame skipping that was going on in that game previously. And that's where I think we have to temper some of our expectations around what to expect with the heavily anticipated GoldenEye, as we know that that should be out at some point, hopefully early 2023, and we know it's 2023 due to the Japanese Nintendo Direct trailer just says coming soon on both Xbox and the North American Nintendo Direct trailer for that, for some reason, why I don't know. But a lot of people, myself included, when seeing the Pilot Wing 64 announcement, assumed that, well, that's a safe bet that GoldenEye will also have 60 FPS support. It very well may, if that is how the engine is programmed. I am not familiar with that personally, but it also may not, and there may not be those big notable upgrades like we've seen certain N64 games get on this service. And it does seem like all of this is essentially side effects for how the N64 emulator is programmed at its core, and when Nintendo makes certain changes behind the scenes, it creates a smoother 60 FPS frame rate only if that title is pre-programmed to support it. So for me personally, I've been more happy with the NSO expansion pack as time has gone on. It is still not in a perfect state today, but I do think that for that $50 annual asking price, while you can definitely argue that we need more consoles like the Game Boy family of systems in that price to really make it worth it, it is still, in my opinion, a service that will continue to receive exciting updates and grow, and maybe in a couple years time it will be a true must buy for Nintendo Switch fans across the board. And Nintendo's already making plenty of revenue off of it, claimed to be up to $1 billion in a single financial year. It is crazy how profitable this service is for them, and I definitely think that they stay the course with this subscription model with their classic library of games going forward. But I want to hear from you guys at this point in the video on both the different stories we talked about today. How are you feeling about the back half of the Nintendo Switch 2022 games lineup, and are you feeling like you're more excited for games like Bayonetta 3 and Sonic Frontiers after their recent trailers? Do you think we need more games this holiday 2022 season, and you're disappointed with the lineup personally? And definitely share with me how you feel about the overall state of N64 games and how they play on NSO, and these latest findings around the newest N64 app emulator update. So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.